Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Ray Hall Tech. In today's video I'm going to take a look at my new HP Pavilion Gaming Laptop. This is the model 15-EU2000. It is a Ryzen 5 5600H laptop that's 6 cores and 12 threads with built-in Radeon 7 graphics. It has an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1650. And I actually upgraded this one from 8 gigs in single channel mode to 16 gigabytes in dual channel mode. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into this video. But the other thing I want to note is I'm currently upgrading this laptop to Windows 11. And from its stock configuration, I removed some bloatware, not all of it, so there's still some of the HP software on here. That'll give you a good experience on what you can expect with it being out of the box and just upgraded to Windows 11. But I also want to note with that RAM change, some of the hardware performance will be a little bit different than what you might see out of the box. So keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and get this computer connected up so you can see the screen directly, and we'll talk about gaming and Windows 11 and see how this laptop performs with those things. Now that I've logged into the computer after the initial upgrade, quick initial glance is that I did pick up the full Windows 11 theme without any issues, and applications and settings that I had in Windows 10 did carry over from the upgrade. You can see my wallpaper is still set up the same, and if I look at applications, you can see my Sophos Home Antivirus is running, my Riva Tuner Statistics Server is running, Steam carried over. I can't find anything that didn't seem to carry over successfully. So with that, let me go ahead and bring up the properties of this PC. Just to confirm, again, like I said, this is the Pavilion Gaming Laptop, the 15EC2000, and it is the Ryzen 5 5600H with the Radeon 7 graphics, and again, I upgraded to 16 gigabytes of RAM. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down a little bit here, and you can see we are running Windows 11 Home that I installed June 28, 2021. Let me go ahead and close that. Let me go ahead and go into my display settings. You'll notice that the right-click menu has definitely changed a little bit. If I hit display settings, the system display is pretty much the same as far as the icons and options go, but I wanted to point out I am just recording one-to-one from my laptop screen to my capture card. I am not upgrading, scaling, or changing the resolution in any way, and I'm not going to play with HDR or SDR at this point in time. I think at the Windows 11 announcement, they talked about some software to enhance SDR content to more HDR content, and I really look forward to that. But I want to go into advanced display and note that my laptop screen is running at 144 Hertz. My capture card is only running at 60 Hertz. So we could have some graphical anomalies from the capture just because the source is running faster than the capture card can handle. But looking just generally at the control panel, you can see most of the things that you would expect are still in the same categories that they were in. I haven't found any real major differences to date, but it looks like everything's in these squares now, or I should say rectangles, depending on your screen resolution. It looks like it just makes it really easy for touch to make sure you don't hit the wrong options or settings. So like if I go into advanced options here, I'm going to tell it to receive products for other Microsoft's stuff at the same time. But with that, there's not much to show in the control panel. It's very basic and the same as when it's compared to Windows 10. I really don't know that there's anything to say about it. The next thing I want to talk about is the start menu. When you look at the start menu, you can see a bunch of icons are here already. These icons were put here when I upgraded to Windows 11. I had removed most of them from my pinned section because I don't use them all the time. But like the Microsoft Store, I can just unpin it. And as I unpin things, you can see that they will disappear. I really don't like a lot of stuff in my pin section, only the icons and applications I use all the time. So I will go through and clean this up. But if you hit all apps, you get the same scrollable list that you always did. And I just want to note one quick thing. Let me pretend like I'm going to uninstall LastPass. it does take me to the old style control panel. So it looks like with the transition to Windows 11, they still have some things in the old style control panel and the new style control panel. So I really hope that they continue to integrate these together so you don't have two places to go to find old control panel settings and new control panel settings. While I've been installing games, I have been playing quite a bit with the settings on Windows 11, and I've come across some things that are not working. For example, if I right-click on this, I don't think... Oh, you can just hover. You don't have to right-click. If I want two side-by-side windows, and I click it, and I select my desktop, you can see that the Windows 11 windows did exactly what they were supposed to. If I hit the 4x4, I can hit File Explorer, and it'll jump. But if I try to do anything with my Steam window, Steam will try and go over there, but it actually will not resize. And it doesn't support, if I right click or hover here, it doesn't support the new Windows 11 tiling system. So we'll probably expect some updates to Steam and Epic Games, because neither of those applications actually support that tiling system. And I've noticed that when I'm dragging now and I select an icon that on Windows 10, those two windows would go side by side. It's not working here in Windows 11, unless I'm actually using a Windows 11 window. And here you can see I'm trying to resize. It will not let me resize towards the Epic Games window. It's actually locking me out of that capability because Epic Games doesn't support the new Windows 11 tile sets yet. Some other things that I've been noticing, you can see I cleaned up my pinned apps here quite a bit. I still don't know how I'm going to do this. I used to use categories and stuff, so that's going to take me a little while to get used to. Let me go ahead and drop that in my games folder. I shut off some of the icons down here, like the search, and put everything over to the left. Super easy to customize and make that work like it used to. I'm currently in airplane mode, which worked fine. It says it shut off my Wi-Fi, but as you can see when I hover, it'll tell you that I have internet access on my Wi-Fi network. We can check that. If I do an IP config, you can see my wireless adapter is not connected. So it just never updated that I had switched to my network connection, which I guess is okay. So there's a few wonky things here in Windows 11 that definitely need to be polished up, as the developer settings had indicated. I did find a bug in the control panel, so if I go into settings, right click here, hit settings. When I'm in settings, I went to privacy and security, and then I went to Windows security. While I was setting things up, if I look at family options, I can't actually open family options or device security, but we're getting much closer. Looks like Fortnite has finally installed. Counter-Strike is still installing. It's almost done. You can see a bunch of the games that I've installed, and I'm going to show a few of these and showcase these in our benchmarking tools. Most of the games I've installed are from Steam, but again, Fortnite is pretty popular, and the last game I have to install before we get into gaming is going to be Valorant, because I know Valorant is also very popular, and a lot of people play Valorant. So once I get my Riot Games stuff installed, we'll go ahead and start looking at gaming benchmarks. So here in Unigine Heaven, you can see that I got a score of 1745. I'm at 66 degrees right now, and one thing about this laptop that I think I'm really going to love, it's significantly quieter now that it's hot. My old machine sounded like a couple of jet engines taking off, so I think I won't feel nearly as guilty about using this in, say, a conference room or a waiting area if these fans are this quiet. So here in Unigine Valley, it gave me a score of 3463, and Again, my GPU never went above 66 degrees centigrade, so I think temperature-wise, this laptop is actually doing a really good job. The next test that I want to run is 3D Mark, and I'm going to use the Time Spy test. It's what's recommended for my particular PC. You can tell you can see if I go home, it's the one that it's going to default to because of my system, processor, and graphics. But if I go over to benchmarks and I hit details on Time Spy, I want to make sure it's running on my NVIDIA GTX 1650 and not the Radeon graphics. I want it to be on display 1. Note that this warning, because of the way the dedicated graphics run through the CPU graphics to connect to the laptop display and things like that, I don't actually get a direct connection to my monitor, and so it gives you that warning that PCI bandwidth, or PCI Express bandwidth, excuse me, could limit it. And if I click on custom run here real quick, it is going to run the 3 basic tests. We should not be running in Windows mode, and I'm just running it in 1080p because that's what my monitor is. I think this defaulted to 2560 by 1440 originally, and that's not what I want it running at, because I would never play on this laptop at that resolution anyway. But otherwise, all of the other settings are default, so I'm going to go ahead and run this custom test, and we'll see how it runs Time Spy on this particular laptop. Now that 3D Mark has concluded and Time Spy has run, you can see it's giving me a graphics score of 5011 and a CPU score of 6395. But what I want to do is scroll down here to the bottom and look at what is going on as far as running the game itself. This will give you a good idea of how the laptop is performing from usability perspective. And the first thing, if you look at the temperature here, the temperature, its highest was 80 degrees on the CPU and 66 on the GPU. I think that's when I started to thermal throttle. Here you can see I went down to 3.5 gigahertz from closer to 4 gigahertz. So once I hit 80 degrees, it slowed down a little bit and then continued to run a little bit slower for the rest of the run. But the GPU stayed at about 100% load throughout all of the tests. It didn't have any problem staying at 100% and running at that 60 degree mark. So I don't think this particular system is going to have much of an issue when it comes to thermals. That gives us 3 benchmarks that we looked at where this computer is running very on par with the way I think it should be running. So let me go ahead and get some games running, and we'll get some of those scores up next. So here I am cruising in No Man's Sky here in space. You can see I am at 60 frames per second. We are using the Vulkan API. And I'm going to go ahead and just land on this little planet down here where I have a miniature base. Alright, so while I'm flying in here, we can see that I'm staying at 60 frames per second very reliably. The GPU staying at 65 degrees centigrade, and my CPU is hitting about 77. Again, when we were in the other application, when my CPU hit about 80 degrees, that's when I started thermal throttling from the 3.8 gigahertz down to the 3.1 or 2, and you can kind of see that I am kind of fluctuating there. But overall, a good 60 FPS reliable here in No Man's Sky, and this rain is not boiling. This planet usually has boiling rain. Oh, it is boiling, never mind. So I'm probably going to die pretty quick here. I'm going to run over to my base and get inside so that I don't die. But here you can see No Man's Sky is performing fairly well, and there isn't any real issues that I can see as far as temperature and thermal throttling goes. Here I've come into Valheim. I've set the resolution to 1920 by 1080 at 144 hertz. So if we can push the frames up that high, we'll get some advantage out of our screen. I do not like motion blur. I do not like sun shafts, and I do not like bloom. So I'm going to go ahead and shut those off. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. We'll start our game. So now that I'm in Valheim, you can see that I'm only currently getting about 40 frames per second. Here in this base, the way I'm running around, it doesn't feel like much of a lag. Well, I lied there. You could see a lag there. But GPU 2, looks like we're running at 81% full speed and 64 degrees. And our CPU, again, is only at 71 degrees. So, again, this laptop is performing pretty well. I can't remember if I have a portal in this base or if I would have to sail. Yeah, it doesn't look like I have a portal, so no worries on that. Let's change some of the graphical options and see if we can't push our frame rate up. Let's just set everything to low. We're going to shut off a few things here. There we go. And now I've pushed Valheim up to 60 frames per second. Still at 1920 by 1080, so if I changed my resolution and used DLSS or another super sampling technology, I could probably keep these higher frame rates and still play the game. The next game on the list of titles that I want to run on this laptop is Fallout 76. Here you can see the GPU is at 61 centigrade, 86% usage, and we are running Fallout at 55 to 60 FPS. This game is actually capped at 60, so this laptop is handling it completely fine. Here you can see that the CPU is only at 20% utilization, so definitely the laptop is not thinking very hard. And this is another game that would run perfectly fine on this particular laptop if you're in the market for a gaming laptop. So here in Fortnite, we're going to go ahead and play in full screen at 1920 by 1080. I'm going to limit the frame rate to 144 FPS, so that way if we change settings to push the system to the limit, we can do that. But as I scroll down, everything else is pretty much default. The one thing I want to note is that I'm currently in DirectX 11 mode. I am not going to go into performance mode for this initial test. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. I'm going to say yes, keep those settings. And you can see that we jumped in the menu from 60 to 144. And I'm going to go ahead and hit play here for just a second. Here I am playing Fortnite with the settings that I showed you. And you can see that I'm getting about 100 frames per second pretty consistently in my Fortnite experience. I'm still not 100% sure where the other players are at. I started on the map, but I got abducted by aliens, and so I'm just trying to re-get my bearings now that I've dropped back into the map. But the GPU is 100%, as expected, because I'm running on pretty regular settings right now. Oh, there's that other person. I can see him now. As far as the CPU is concerned, I'm only at 20 to 40%. But things are running pretty good, as you can see. So if I was to go into performance mode, I could probably really push things and get this game up to the full 144 FPS. That would take advantage of my monitor. So as soon as this match is over, I'll go ahead and drop out, and we'll look at the next game in the series. So here in Valorant, you can see that I'm playing in a practice bot match. I am easily pushing 200 to 300 frames per second. No real issue at all getting this game to operate. A lot of esports titles are like this. I'll actually jump into a bot match in CSGO here in a minute, and you'll be able to see that this laptop will handle those games exceedingly well. But yeah, so Valorant, no real issues in Valorant. So here in CSGO, I'm having a bit of a problem getting MSI Afterburner working, but I turned on the Steam in-game FPS counter. It's in the upper right corner. You can see here that I am running CSGO up to the 144 frames per second without much issue at all. So I think this laptop is a perfect esports laptop. It doesn't seem to have any problems with things like Fortnite and Valorant and that kind of stuff. It's now the next day, and I really enjoyed playing with Windows 11 and the benchmarks in the gaming on my laptop. And I have to say, at $700, I think this is an amazing machine. I don't need anything super powerful because most of my gaming and my day-to-day work is done on desktop computers, but I think this would be a great little machine for when I'm on vacation and on the go, and I'd definitely buy another one if I needed another laptop. The only complaint I had about it in the beginning was its keyboard flex. It is kind of spongy, but after I got used to it, or I changed my typing on it, I'm not sure which happened. I don't even notice it anymore, and I can type just fine on the laptop. And so I don't think that's a deal breaker. And as far as thermals go, because this is a laptop, and its price point, I think there's some thermal throttling to be expected. This Ryzen 5 5600H has a max thermal temperature of 105 degrees according to AMD, and it should be able to boost to 4.3 gigahertz. And in all of my testing, as soon as we hit 80 degrees and 3.9 gigahertz, the machine throttled itself down. The base clock is 3.3 gigahertz, and I never saw it drop below 3.1 gigahertz, so that's something to keep in mind if you really want the speed of the laptop. To get that 4.3 gigahertz, this price point may not be the right place for you, but I think it's an amazing trade-off to keep the laptop cool and quiet, and it's definitely not a deal breaker for me. As I mentioned, my old laptop does sound like a jet plane taking off, so I'm very happy with how this laptop handles its thermals. The next thing I mentioned is the RAM. This machine only had one stick of RAM, so it was running in single channel. I immediately upgraded it to dual channel, and I went from 8 gigs to 16 gigs. I don't think you can run a gaming laptop with less than 16 gigs of RAM today. The games that I played, I wasn't really paying attention to the RAM as much, but I do remember seeing at least one of them hit about 6.5 gigs of RAM being used. So if you take into account the operating system and everything outside of the gaming environment, 8 gigs just isn't enough. So moving on from the hardware, Windows 11 seems to have been a pretty good experience so far. I mentioned that when I upgraded, all of my applications and stuff came over, and I didn't have any issues with my games, with my antivirus, anything like that. It really does feel like it's a massive visual overhaul from Windows 10 to what Windows 11 is going to become. But I have found a few things in the control panel that aren't working. I've had some daily task things like that I do that are driving me insane. For example, you can't right-click on the taskbar to open Task Manager. You have to make sure you right-click on the Start button itself to bring up Task Manager, or you have to use Control-Alt-Delete. So I'll have to get used to some of those nuances. And then Windows 11 suffers the same fate in the settings application versus the control panel, where you still have both of them. But overall, the experience was very smooth, very fluid, and I had no issues finding any settings at all in Windows 11. So if you want to play with Windows 11 before it gets released, definitely check out the developer preview, but know that you can have some issues. Like I said, some of the control panel, or I should say some of the settings icons won't open for me. Particularly, I went into a couple of security settings. When I tried to open them, they just didn't work. And it was definitely an interesting experience trying to add a family member or something like that that wouldn't work in Windows 11 when I've been doing it in Windows 8 and 10 that way forever. So it definitely needs some polish still. So if you're not very technical or you're afraid to get your hands dirty, I wouldn't recommend going to Windows 11 just yet, but it's definitely looking pretty good, and I'm excited for what the future brings with Windows 11. And finally, as far as gaming experience goes, every game, every benchmark I ran, this laptop performed exactly like I would expect it to. So Windows 11 did not cause any performance degradation, and I've even watched a few videos on YouTube that says it helped provide some performance in certain cases. So I'm definitely looking for that. And I think Windows 11 may be my next gaming operating system once Windows 11 becomes a permanent fixture in the Microsoft ecospace. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's getting kind of long, so if you like my content, definitely subscribe to my channel. On this video, give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Give me the thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, and if you want me to include anything in a future video, definitely let me know, and I'll try and include your comments if I can. And I want to say thank you very much. We'll see you in the next one.